Your palms are sweating. Your heart is pounding. You're standing at the front of a room, and every single face is turned toward you. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing is attacking you. And yet, your body is reacting as if your life depends on the next 30 seconds. That reaction feels irrational. It is not. Public speaking is consistently ranked as one of the most feared experiences a person can have, often rated above the fear of death itself. That sounds absurd on the surface, but your brain is not responding to the room in front of you. It is responding to something much older. To understand why, you have to go back roughly 200,000 years, long before microphones, long before stages, long before anyone had a reason to fear an audience in the way you do today. Back then, you did not live alone. You lived in a small group, rarely more than 150 people, according to the work of anthropologist Robin Dunbar. That number was not random. It was the upper limit of how many relationships a human brain could realistically track and maintain. Every person in that group mattered. Every relationship was currency. And in that world, being noticed by the group was not a neutral event. It was a high-stakes one. If the group approved of you, you ate. You were protected. You had a mate. If the group turned against you, the consequences were not embarrassing. They were fatal. Expulsion from the group meant facing predators alone, finding food alone, surviving the night alone. For most of human history, social rejection and physical death were separated by a very thin line, so your brain built a warning system, a fast one. One that did not wait for actual danger to strike, but activated the moment you sensed the possibility of judgment. That system still runs today. It just cannot tell the difference between a hostile audience and a hungry lion. This is where the research gets interesting. Social psychologist Kipling Williams spent decades studying what happens to the human mind during social exclusion, using an experiment called cyberball. In it, participants play a simple ball-tossing game with two other players, unaware that those players are computer-controlled. At some point, the other players simply stop passing the ball. That is all it takes. Within minutes, participants report genuine distress, not mild discomfort. Real, measurable distress, as if something important had been taken from them. Why would being excluded from a meaningless computer game feel like that? Because your brain was never built to distinguish between meaningful exclusion and trivial exclusion. It was built to treat all exclusion as an emergency. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger took this further. Using brain imaging, she found that the same region activated by physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex, also activates during social rejection. Your brain does not have a separate system for hurt feelings. It uses the same alarm it uses for a broken bone. Think about what that means. When you imagine an audience judging you, your ancient threat detection system does not perceive an inconvenience. It perceives potential expulsion from the group, potential exile, potential death, in the terms your ancestors would have understood it. That is why your body responds the way it does before you speak. Your heart rate increases to prepare you to flee or fight. Your muscles tense, your mouth goes dry, because digestion is not a priority when you might be facing exile. None of this is a malfunction. It is a 200,000-year-old survival protocol executing exactly as designed. But here's the twist. Your ancestors were never afraid of speaking. They were afraid of what speaking exposed them to. In a hunter-gatherer band, an individual rarely stood in front of the entire group as a singular focus of attention. Attention of that kind was reserved for moments of extreme consequence, a leader making a critical decision, an accusation being levied, a status challenge unfolding. Being the sole focus of many eyes at once was not a communication event. It was a signal that something in the social order was at stake. Your brain still reads it that way. When you stand at the front of a room, every eye pointed at you. Some ancient part of your mind concludes that a status contest is happening, whether you asked for one or not. It prepares you to defend your place in the group, because for most of human history, that is exactly what a room full of staring faces meant. This explains something people rarely admit out loud. It is not the content of the speech that terrifies you. You could say the exact same words alone in your room without a flicker of fear. It is the visibility. It is the felt sense that your value, your competence, your belonging are all being silently measured, and one wrong sentence could shift the verdict against you. Psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent much of his career studying loneliness and social connection, described the human need for belonging as a biological imperative, not a preference. Perceived isolation, his research showed, triggers the same vigilance systems that once protected your ancestors from predators roaming just beyond the firelight. A room of unfamiliar faces reads, to an ancient nervous system, as a room of unknown allegiances. Your body prepares accordingly, whether or not the modern situation calls for it. Modern life rarely punishes a bad presentation with actual exile. You will not be left outside the walls to face the elements because a slide did not land or because you stumbled over a sentence. Your job is very likely safe. Your friendships are very likely intact. But your nervous system was not built for modern consequences. It was built for ancestral ones. And it has not updated its threat model in 200,000 years. This is also why public speaking anxiety rarely responds well to logic alone. Telling yourself the audience is friendly, that the stakes are low, that nobody actually cares that much, is true. It is also mostly irrelevant to a threat system that operates beneath conscious reasoning. You cannot out-argue a survival reflex. You can only work with it, which is why the most effective techniques for managing this fear tend to target the body first, not the mind. Slowing your breathing signals safety to the same nervous system that is bracing for exile. Physical movement before speaking helps discharge the surge of stress hormones your body has already released in anticipation. Even reframing the audience, imagining them as a small circle of familiar faces rather than an undifferentiated crowd, echoes the group size your brain evolved to feel safe within, the very number Dunbar identified as the natural ceiling of human connection. Notice how this plays out far away from any stage 2. The dread of speaking up in a meeting, the flinch before posting something publicly online, where strangers can silently judge in numbers no ancestral human ever faced. Your nervous system does not distinguish between a village square and a comment section. It only recognizes exposure, and exposure has always meant risk. Your evaluative circuitry was calibrated for a world of 150 people whose opinions genuinely determined your survival. It was never calibrated for an audience of thousands of strangers who will forget your name by tomorrow. There is something almost comforting in understanding this. The fear was never a personal flaw. It was never proof that you are uniquely anxious or uniquely unqualified to speak. It is the same fear every human before you has carried, inherited from ancestors who survived precisely because they took social standing seriously. Every person who has ever stood in front of a room and felt their pulse spike was standing on the same evolutionary wiring as every other person before them. The engineer, the teacher, the politician who seems fearless on stage. Underneath the practiced composure, the same ancient alarm is often quietly ringing. Even those who appear entirely at ease in front of crowds are rarely free of the response itself. What separates them is not an absence of the ancient alarm, but familiarity with it. Repeated exposure teaches the nervous system, slowly, that this kind of visibility does not end in exile. The fear does not vanish. It simply stops being read as an emergency. Public speaking did not create this fear. It simply activates a warning system that has been running, largely unnoticed, your entire life, and every moment you have ever wondered what other people think of you. So the next time your palms sweat before you speak, remember what is actually happening. It is not a malfunction. Nothing is broken. Your body is doing precisely what it was built to do, protecting you from a version of exile that no longer exists, using instructions written long before rooms, before stages, before anyone ever stood up to speak at all. Your heart's pounding. Your palms are sweating. Every face in the room is turned toward you. And for the first time, you understand exactly why.